Are we live? Are we live? Welcome to another fabulous rendition of Just My Opinion podcast, season 3, episode 1, already struggle streaming. It's your host, your moderator. I'm Christopher Don One. Please be sure to rate, comment, subscribe, share this lovely YouTube live stream and this YouTube channel with your friends, family, and followers. Also, help the podcast as well as this YouTube channel in the algorithm. You heard me? First and foremost, I'd like to say thank you for those out there who's been waiting in anticipation for season 3 of Just My Opinion podcast. I knew last season it was pretty light, all right? Well, season 1, it was like 60 plus live streams with some videos mixed in between. Season 2, it was like 21 episodes, and people were going like, dang, what's going on with you? All right. Your boy got mad busy. Plus, you guys seem to gravitate more to the videos. So I started chopping up the videos more than doing the live streams. But there is a lot of you guys that enjoy these live streams, and I really do appreciate. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I like to thank all the new subscribers. I like to thank all the new subscribers who just subscribed to Just My Opinion podcast. I like to thank my day one subscribers or subscribers in general. Thank you. Thank you. I really do appreciate that. And if you guys would do your boy a favor, do your boy solid, rate, comment, subscribe. Let's get this crack-a-lacking and let's enjoy today's live stream. Now, today's live stream is a doozy, okay? A doozy. We're going to be talking about the beef. What's going on with Jason Whitlock, Stephen A. Smith, Shannon Sharpe, and yes, Skip Bayless. All right. It just seems like there's some beefaroni going on in these sports entertainment streets. All right. So to understand all that, you have to start from the beginning. And we'll have to go back. How far back? Way back. All right. So before I begin today's live stream, I first like to throw a disclaimer out there. What I'm about to say doesn't mean I'm for nor against the individuals that I'm going to be talking about. Jason Whitlock, Stephen A. Smith, Shannon Sharpe, Skip Bayless. I'm not for nor against what has been transpiring up to this point. All right. But let's start with the story. Now, like I said, we're going to go far back, late 80s, early 90s. All right. And you have to understand in that period of time and in that era, you know, before the late 80s and the 90s, 70s, 60s, and 50s, sports was embedded in society's fabric. Okay. It wasn't as popular as it is today. All right. It wasn't lucrative as far as money-wise as it today. Today, the NFL, the NBA, even Major League Baseball, they're cranking in billions of dollars, okay, with their licensing agreements and their streaming and just their revenue just through the roof, okay? Who could imagine sports would come this far so fast, okay? So before I feel like in the early 80s, well, in the mid 80s to 90s, sports entertainment started blowing up. It started, you have to understand before that time, newspapers were very important. The print media had a grip and control with not only news but sports. And the print media was a powerful platform back in the day. Everyone, in order to survive, if you are a sports personality, a sports analyst, or a columnist, you have to get your feet wet in the print media, because print media was a monster. All right. And that's where Jason Whitlock, Stephen A. Smith, and even Skip Bayless, started grinding their image in the print media. That's where all of these individuals started from, where they came from. And you have to also understand, in the print media, sports was big, but it wasn't that big. Like the New York Post, the LA Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Dallas paper. I forgot the Dallas paper. It's been so long ago. Print media was a monster, and then you had your sports magazines like Sports Illustrated. Okay, you had all of those print media outlets, and sports was, particularly in the 50s and 60s, and in between the 70s, it was always considered a topic, but it wasn't the main topic. Very rarely sports media made the front page in print media. But overall, sports media will be somewhat the back pages when you talk about the scores and the highlights. You want to read your information, and occasionally sports would make it sports media will become a topic on the front pages if something happened, like the home run record, or whoever won that year's championship, or if a certain individual breaks a personal record that's a very popular record. um it will be featured in print media on the front page. But generally, sports media was sort of the back pages. Now, when I say the back pages, I don't mean, theoretically in the back pages. It's just with news was front and center. The weather will have a little column somewhere on the top. But generally, uh, you know, uh, anything that happens, when it comes to politics, when it comes to news, tragic, or anything like that, it gets the front page treatment. All right. So the print media was a king and a monster back in that time. And that's where Stephen A. Smith, Jason Whitlock, and Skip Bayless started from. Now, television was starting to rank up and starting to be the next you know uncharted land, sort of say, for a lot of these columnists that transition from the print media to television. And cable and satellite TV was at an all-time high, particularly like in the 80s, but it really started blowing up, midway in the 90s. And then you started seeing these print media columnists transition from the print media to television, okay, particularly satellite and cable. And a lot of those individuals, like Jason Whitlock, he was on the sports reporters with ESPN. Stephen A. Smith occasionally was with the sports reporters. Skip Bayless was in television and in radio and things of that nature. So you had a lot of these guys that are juggernauts today. Mad Dog Christopher Russo, he was in television, and as well as radio. Right. So you got these juggernauts that you see and you talk about today. A lot of the young folks out there are going like, well, how did they start it? That's where they started. And I started to see a transition and a change with a lot of these sports columnists that, grind their teeth in print media, transitioning into television. And one of those individuals that was a highlight, particularly in that era, was Stephen A. Smith. A lot of people seem to forget, before Stephen A. Smith was the juggernaut, the monster that he is on ESPN, Stephen A. Smith, started, just getting offers to do gigs on different types of sports shows and late night shows. You started seeing Stephen A. Smith, bounce around. But he was a fixture on a television show that was on Fox Sports that you guys call Fox Sports 1 now. It was just Fox Sports. And Stephen A. Smith was a fixture on the best damn sports show, period. Okay, it had Tom Arnold, it had John Sally, and I forgot the chubby baseball player. But anywho, Stephen A. Smith would make his rounds on the best damn sports show, period. Okay, he'll be simulcast, and he will talk about what's going on in the world of sports. And people started noticing Stephen A. Smith. He's, you start seeing, you actually got to see the personality Stephen A. Smith. Before you knew Stephen A. Smith, you read his articles, but you didn't see the charismatic characteristics of Stephen A. Smith until he made his presence on television. And you started seeing you start hearing Stephen A. Smith's opinions about pop culture, sports entertainment. But Stephen A. Smith, would really, dog out a lot of athletes, okay? And would, coin them different names and things of that nature. Now he didn't, truly go in on them, but if they had a bad performance, Stephen A. Smith would throw a punchline, a joke, and it was kind of funny. But that's where Stephen A. Smith started. You started seeing Stephen A. Smith more on television. Was the best damn sports show, period. Now at the end of the day, Stephen A. Smith was on SI. He was doing. I know a lot of people don't realize this, but Sports Illustrated was once a 24-hour news cycle, was particularly with sports. And Sports Illustrated had a sports channel, okay? And you will see Stephen A. Smith make appearances there. You will see Stephen A. Smith on CBS Sports. You'll see Stephen A. Smith on ESPN. Basically, Stephen A. Smith was just bouncing around, all right? Now, Jason Whitlock, who came from the print media, started making his presence on television, similar to like what Stephen A. Smith was doing, but you would really see him on the sports reporters, ESPN sports reporters, and he would do it with these other print media columnists that were kings in print media. And he would debate these columnists on sports topics and things of that nature. Now, you can immediately tell Jason Whitlock and Stephen A. Smith were how they, proceeded on television was totally different. Their characteristics were different. Stephen A. Smith was making sports topics entertaining, making it funny, and Jason Whitlock was taking his craft very, very seriously. Okay, he had a very, very serious tone about sports topics, and sometimes he would take it to another level where he would make his personal opinions and comments about certain athletes and their behavior, as well as where they grew up in their society and things of that nature. But he didn't go wild on it like he is with the later years of Jason Whitlock. But you can start seeing snippets of Jason Whitlock on the sports reporters. His narrative would be very calculated, very cold, and just spew his own opinions. Now, a lot of people felt like Jason Whitlock was a sellout to the Black community because he would always bash um, certain popular Black athletes in NFL and Major League Baseball. Basketball. And a lot of people also don't realize that Jason Whitlock used to play some college ball. Okay. And that's where it started with Jason Whitlock. But, Jason Whitlock, when he tried to transition into the pros, it just wasn't a future for him. So he decided to go the media route. And a lot of people believe that Jason Whitlock has an axe to grind with a lot of other athletes, a lot of other black athletes, because you know his talent didn't into transitioning his talent as an athlete very profitable, like these certain black athletes. Okay, so he didn't get the semantics. He didn't get people begging for him to come to their colleges. He didn't get those tours. He didn't get transitioning from college to pro. He didn't get a livelihood like that. Okay, but a lot of people feel like Jason Whitlock has an axe to grind with whatever popular star that was relevant in his time with the sports reporters. All right, so Stephen A. Smith was sort of being entertaining, being funny, coining certain athletes different names, talk about they're trash on the court, they're on the insulting um their performance on the field and on the court. That's where Stephen A. Smith took it to, and that's how he got hugely popular on the Best Damn Sports Show. Period. All right, so Fox Sports 1, ESPN started to see the development and the growth in Stephen A. Smith, and they're going like, okay, Fox Sports 1 gave him his first big break. They started to, instead of, just bringing him in on certain segments, he was a fixture to the Best Damn Sports Show, period, as well as Fox Radio. Okay. So Stephen A. Smith started to transition from the print media to the television media, and he was becoming a star very fast, very quickly. Okay. But the thing about Fox Sports that was different from ESPN, it was like the Fox Sports was like the minor leagues of sports entertainment, but ESPN was the professional league. Okay, and everybody was going to ESPN because ESPN was taking over. They had ESPN had ESPN News. It was a 24-hour sports network. You had ESPN2. You had the original ESPN. You had Sports Center. 6 p.m. Sports Center was popular. It was, you had all these ESPN shows. ESPN started to become a dynasty in sports media. Okay, then you started seeing ESPN inking deals with licenses with college football, with the NBA, with the NBA, NFL, the National Hockey League. Major League Baseball. ESPN had their hands embedded with a lot of popular leagues back at that time. All right. Where Fox Sports, they had on Sundays they'll have Fox Sports football, and that was on Fox Television, and as well as they had some markets with Fox Radio. They had the Best Damn Sports Show, period. But that was pretty much it. The extension of Fox Sports. When you look at ESPN, they started to create shows around sports entertainment and sports topics and sports news. All right. Now I said recently SI had a 24-hour sports network, and it was it was that it was Fox, it was ESPN, it was ABC until Disney bought ABC, and since Disney owns ESPN, they're in bed together. It was CBS. You had all of these. You had a lot of sports shows and networks that would compete against everyone. But ESPN was on the top of the mountain, and that's where everyone wanted to go to. Stephen A. Smith was one of those individuals. So Stephen A. Smith started to do reports and columns with ESPN. He started to, gain trust and started to gain friends over there at the network. And one of the people that truly believed in Stephen A. Smith and was probably the prime reason Stephen A. Smith, uh, got to ESPN, landed a big deal with ESPN, and now he's the host of First Take. It was Skip Bayless. Now, Skip Bayless at that time, Skip Bayless transitioned from print media to television. And a lot of people don't realize Skip Bayless was doing these debate shows way before they got popular today. Okay. He would do segments, before he got to ESPN, he would go to local television stations and do these debate style shows and talk about the topics and things of that nature. So, uh, a lot of people don't give Skip Bayless his flowers. He was pretty much the creator, the architect of debate television, and he's the one that made it super popular. Okay. Well, ESPN saw that. They hired Skip Bayless, and it was a show called Cold Pizza. And Cold Pizza would have their traditional journalists, covering sports topics and sports news. And Cold Pizza was trying to be the Today Show of the morning. The Today Show, NBC Today Show, or CBS Morning News, or Good Morning America. That was Cold Pizza was trying to do, but Cold Pizza was only going to talk about sports topics. All right, and they had a traditional hosts that were journalists that will cover these topics, but every once in a while they'll have certain segments, and a lot of the segments missed and a lot of them hit. But the most important segment they had, and it started to gain popularity, was a segment with Skip Bayless and Woody Page. All right, but at first it would be Skip Bayless, Woody Page, and every once in a while you'll have different guests that would debate Skip Bayless. Well, that's when you started seeing Stephen A. Smith. Stephen A. Smith would have certain segments on Cold Pizza, and I think it was called First and 10. Correct me if I'm wrong. It was First and 10, and they would have these topics, during the whole airing of Cold Pizza. And that's when you started seeing Stephen A. Smith debate Skip Bayless. And Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith, after a while working with one another, they started to get hugely popular, hugely quick. And these segments that they would have on Cold Pizza, when they look at the ratings of Cold Pizza wasn't really all that great. But when Stephen A. Smith would debate whoever, but more so with Stephen A. Smith, these ratings got hugely popular. Okay, these segments got hugely popular in the ratings. All right, so Woody Page would still debate Skip Bayless, but after a while, Woody Page decided to just simply, go back to print media. He went back, and Woody Page is a columnist from Denver, and Woody Page would go back and do that. Okay, and Woody Page wasn't considered full time with Cold Pizza. Thanks for the like. I really do appreciate the like. I really do appreciate the like. Let me get back into this, okay? But and if anybody comments, I won't be able to read your comments until I'm done with this story. All right. So you can get an understanding why there's beef between Jason Whitlock and Stephen A. Smith and Shannon Sharpe and Skip Bayless, how they all chime in and how they are all together. All right. So Skip Bayless saw the potential of him and Stephen A. Smith debating, and he made Stephen A. Smith a full-time partner doing this. All right. And Steve, they would every time they do the First and 10, the ratings will go through the roof when Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith would debate one another. And they had huge chemistry, they had huge respect, and they started to be friends in and out of the studio, and they still are friends to a certain extent. All right. Well, we'll talk about that a little bit later. All right. So Stephen A. Smith Skip Bayless brought Stephen A. Smith there because because before he started debating Skip Bayless, you know, Stephen A. Smith was still transitioning. Uh, ESPN didn't know what they had in Stephen A. Smith. Fox Sports didn't know what they had in Stephen A. Smith. But Skip Bayless continued to push for Stephen A. Smith to join him and debate him on cold pizza. Now, the powers that be at ESPN said, wait a minute, the only popular segment on Cold Pizza is when Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless are debating. So won't we just make First and 10? We'll just have First and 10 have more airtime and decrease the time with the rest of the people on Cold Pizza. Start cutting out all these ridiculous segments and things of that nature. All right. That's how it started. Then, when it got so popular with Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless, when look, it's obvious. The only time cold pizza gets popular and gets popping is when Stephen A. Smith would debate Skip Bayless. So then they said, okay, let's just get rid of cold pizza. Make one of the journalists a mediator of Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith, and we'll just do that segment for an hour or 2 hours a day, and that spawned First and 10. All right, and that made First and 10 hugely popular, very fast, very quickly, and that's pretty much what put Stephen A. Smith on the map. It put Skip Bayless on the map, but it really helped Stephen A. Smith because before that, before him debating Skip Bayless, he was just bouncing around. Fox Sports done let go of him on Fox Radio. Um, and ESPN didn't know what they had in Stephen A. Smith. Stephen A. Smith was just a person that will come on certain shows and talk about certain topics. I think another thing that people didn't realize what they had in Stephen A. Smith was Stephen A. Smith was very competitive, and they used to call Stephen A. Smith a loudmouth, particularly in the rooms, in the newsrooms, and his attitude. Sometimes people that is not from that world will be turned off by Stephen A. Smith. But Stephen A. Smith was very proud of his work. Yes, Stephen A. Smith can be an irritant sometimes, but Stephen A. Smith was incredibly knowledgeable. He was funny. He was entertaining. He dumbed down the science of sports to make it understood and understand by the casual sports fan that sometimes get lost in the sauce with the stats and things of that nature. So the viewership loves Stephen A. Smith. Okay, but people, particularly in print media and on these networks, they had an issue with Stephen A. Smith because they viewed his attitude as a negative. They viewed him as a loudmouth, being very negative. They viewed his persona as being very negative. And Stephen A. Smith comes from the barbershop community, and a lot of people are not going to understand this, but like when you go to the barbershop and get your haircut done, there's always somebody in the barbershop that's waiting to get their hair cut or just sitting there, you know, being the loud mouth, controlling the conversation, particularly sports talk, and then they weigh in on different athletes and teams and organizations, and you get irritated by them because they would take it personal and they would also, be very nasty with it. Okay, very gnarly with it, and uh, you know, some people that's getting their hair cut would will be turned off about it. The barbers, they've been dealing with this individual for quite some time now. They're pretty much numb by it because they know he just says things just to spark controversy. Okay. And that's what Stephen A. Smith came from. He came from that element. And Skip Bayless saw the potential in Stephen A. Smith and he was the first pioneer to land on Stephen A. Smith's rock by Stephen A. Smith getting an incredible contract with ESPN. First and 10 was blowing up. Skip Bayless was happy. They're doing astronomical ratings. Okay. They are blowing up. All right. Now, this was the era, and they had a moderator, and her name was Candace. I don't it started with a C, and she came from the First and 10 thing. She was the next moderator. It was a guy that was doing First and 10. Then he left ESPN. Then they hired the I forgot her name. She used to do these Sports Center updates. They transitioned her from talking about the day that was, the hour that was, and then they promoted her as the moderator to moderate Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless. And then they got rid of her and usher in Carrie Champion. And this is where we start to see Carrie Champion blossom on ESPN. They changed the name to First and 10. Now they're changing it to First Take. They got Rick Ross to do the theme music. The theme music, every time you hear the theme music every morning, it just gets you psyched up and amped. Okay. It's a battle by the music playing. Okay. Then you start seeing, Stephen A. Smith, you start seeing Skip Bayless, you start seeing Carrie Champion, the intro cut, and then they cut into the live feed. And when they did First Take, they was pretty much the first show in television or in sports television to have a debate style type of show. No one was doing this, okay? No one. Not CBS, NBC, uh, you know, uh, CNN had the 24-hour thing. They had the Sports Illustrated thing, but they canceled that many moons ago. Nobody wasn't doing or had the motion like ESPN when they had First Take. And First Take was the most popular show in television, not sports television, not entertainment television, television in general. Okay. Particularly at that time when the soaps are up, where the game shows are up, the talk shows are on up. I mean, on um, the morning shows, the news shows, the soaps, the game shows, they were on around First Take. And people don't realize when First Take would come on, everybody would gravitate to First Take in the morning. All right. Now, normally, you have to understand before First Take, before First and 10, Cold Pizza, before any of these sports shows that came on satellite and digital cable, at that particular time, and in that particular hour, the soaps will be on, the game shows will be on, Phil Donahue, Oprah Winfrey, the talk shows, all those type of talk shows will be on. Montel Jordan, Jerry Springer, they would all be on at that particular time. And you started seeing a transition when First Take started to get their own legs, get their own following. And when First Take was blowing up at that particular time, at that particular hour, a lot of those shows uh, uh, had to change their times. And some of those shows moved into the afternoon, okay, because they just couldn't compete with with First Take, because First Take was the only thing that was that type of a debate type of show. Stephen A. Smith was a loudmouth. He's yelling back at Skip Bayless. Skip Bayless would say some things that would tick you off. And sometimes they would, the black hat, the villain hat. Sometimes Skip Bayless would wear it. Sometimes Stephen A. Smith would wear it. But more times than not, Skip Bayless would wear that hat, and he would wear it with pride. Okay, so First Take was just blowing up. All right, it was just, it was internationally known. All right, and the competition would fold their tents or just close up shop. The competition would say, okay, well, we probably going to have to keep running these shows in the afternoon. The soaps will come an hour on later. But this was also the time where this was, quote unquote, the hour where women were watching a lot of these morning shows. Because while the husband was gone to work, the woman would stay at home and she would watch the soaps. She would watch the game. So I'm just saying the majority of the audience was women. I'm not saying all the audience was women, but I'm saying the majority of the audience were women. Okay. When First Take started to get popular, a lot of the audience was a male audience. And this was an untapped resource that the game shows, the soaps, the daytime talk shows didn't even know existed until First Take started to get hugely popular. All right. So now you got First Take blowing up. You got ESPN on an all-time high. You got all of these shows that premiere in the afternoon to the evening. They're blowing up. Life is good. The sports reporters every Sunday, they would blow up. Everybody was starting, it was starting to transition to sports being numero uno as far as entertainment goes. And ESPN had a rap in that lane. All right. Now the other networks, they would have their version of their First Take, but none of them couldn't compete with First Take. It was First Take, and everybody else just takes second. Okay. And if you're not first, you're last. Okay. That was the motto. Okay. Back in that era. All right. So, life is good. And then First Take, and like every show, you have your ups, you have your downs. And one of the all-time lows First Take had to struggle with is the Ray Rice incident. And you started to and before the Ray Rice incident, people at first in the beginning was liking how Stephen A. Smith would insult the athletes and don't call them by their names and call them by other names and say that they're they're garbage juice, they're trash. Why are they in the league? People started liking Stephen A. Smith, attacking the athletes. And people sort of low key liked Skip Bayless, insulting the athletes as well. Okay. In the beginning. But then you started to see a lot of these former athletes go into media. They would be hired by ESPN, they will be hired by CBS or Fox Sports. And one of the athletes that was hugely popular. There was a lot of athletes in that era that transitioned from being an ex jock to being in sports media. But the biggest name, in my opinion, was Jalen Rose. All right, Jalen Rose, was when the later years of his athletic life in the NBA, he already had it planned out and mapped out that once he's done with the NBA or the NBA is done with him, he would just transition into sports journalism. And, Jalen Rose was on a lot of different networks bouncing around and things of that nature. But ESPN got him his very first big break. And ESPN hired him. They hired him while he was still an athlete uh, playing in the NBA. So when Jalen Rose made it official and he just became a sports journalist, he was featured on Sports Center. They had Jalen Rose plastered everywhere. And one of the biggest moments, and some people will say this is the biggest downfall of First Take, but I feel like this was one of, and a lot of people start giving credit to, remember, Draymond Green says old media, new media versus old media. Jalen Rose was new media before Draymond Green. Jalen Rose was new media before JJ Redick, Kendrick Perkins, and before Stephen A. Smith transitioned away from old media to new media. All right. Jalen Rose was the first pioneer of someone that's actually going to stand up for the athletes on these debate shows. And Jalen Rose had a huge problem on how Stephen A. Smith would disrespect athletes and Skip Bayless disrespecting athletes as well. Particularly when you look at their amateur athletic time, Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless, they were never good. Okay. Their talent athletic wise was not going to get them into the next league, which is the professional rankings. I mean, they barely dominated in the collegiate rankings. Okay. And a lot of people felt like Stephen A. Smith, Jason Whitlock, and Skip Bayless, the reason why they were jaded towards these athletes and they would, disrespect these athletes because they were once athletes. And they just, their talent just couldn't get them or propel them into the professional leagues. And they just had a huge problem with athletes that was extraordinarily talented than Stephen A. Smith, Skip Bayless, and Jason Whitlock, and they would excel in the professional rankings, and they would look at these athletes, Jason Whitlock, Stephen A. Smith, and Skip Bayless. People would think that they had a problem with these athletes because these athletes didn't take their craft very seriously. Okay. And Stephen A. Smith was, sort of kind of, poking the bear with a lot of athletes, calling them trash. And this is where Stephen A. Smith was hugely popular when he would do when Kwame Brown was in the NBA. He would call Kwame Brown a bust. He would call Kwame Brown garbage. He would insult Kwame Brown. Okay. He would make a name off of himself by insulting Kwame Brown. Okay. Um, and a lot of people didn't like it. And Jalen Rose is one of those people. So when they when they offered Jalen Rose to go on First Take, Jalen Rose had, well, this was First and 10. Jalen Rose had a huge issue with how Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless critique these athletes. And Jalen Rose would say, look, you guys every day call these guys garbage, garbino, they're trash, they're bums, they're busts, but they're doing something that a small percentage of the world is able to do, and the majority of the world can't do. Okay, you can't call Kwame Brown a bust when he was drafted and he's playing on an NBA team. Okay, if Kwame Brown is a bust, what that says about the rest of the people who don't get an opportunity to play on the highest standards, to compete with the best competition when you talk about these professional leagues, when you talk about the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, the National Hockey League. So you can't call these guys a bust when they are working in these professional rankings. Okay. And Jalen Rose had a huge issue with Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless constantly doing that. Now, Stephen A. Smith, at first, every week, Stephen A. Smith would bash these athletes. But when Jalen Rose got on the studio, it kind of puts Stephen A. Smith back. And then Stephen A. Smith started backpedaling. So Stephen A. Smith was getting a lot of slack, negative slack, for how he viewed black athletes. And everyone thought that Stephen A. Smith was, building his future on degrading black athletes. And a lot of people thought that was a huge no-no. Particularly in the African American community. Okay, it's bad enough that we have other nationalities bashing black athletes. It's bad enough that the print media at one point of time was controlling the narratives and controlling the stories on a lot of these black athletes. And that's why when the agent for I think I forgot his name, but the agent for LeBron James, when he made the comment a couple of weeks ago that LeBron James is the GOAT because of the media today. Everyone has a camera, everyone can go on social media and voice their opinions about whatever athlete, and he's under the most criticism and things of that nature. I feel like people get lost in the sauce when they're talking this way, and they seem to forget, like, back at that time, print media was the king, and they controlled your story. And if you didn't have a relationship with anybody in print media, if someone in print media had an axe to grind with the athletes back then, they can really destroy your career or cut your career in half by printing stories that are not favorable about you. Okay. So you have to just kiss ass, sort of say, with print media. And a lot of those columnists in print media transition from print media to television, and they still had that same mindset. Like, we're the kings. We dictate whether or not you're going to get another contract. We dictate whether or not you're going to have a career in the professional rankings. So make us happy or you're going to be very unhappy. And a lot of athletes, tried these columnists, and a lot of these columnists succeeded in that particular time. You have to understand that era, all right? And that era, you know, even though it's not the most criticism, but the criticism, if you didn't have a relationship with print media, you was not going to survive. Okay. So that's where Stephen A. Smith, that's where Skip Bayless, that's where Jason Whitlock, they were cut from the cloth from the print media, and they transitioned that narrative and that attitude to cable and satellite TV. Well, Jalen Rose was the first pioneer of the new media, and Jalen Rose said he was going to do things different. He wasn't going to insult fans. He's not going to insult athletes. You know, now if an athlete had a bad performance, he was going to say, "Hey, look, that athlete had a bad performance," but he was not going to insult them by calling them out by their name. He wasn't going to talk about their family or anything like that. And that was the era when Skip Bayless, he was getting very reckless at that particular time. He was calling Chris Bosh, Chris Spice, or one of the Spice Girls. Uh, you know, Skip Bayless was getting very, very reckless with a lot of the athletes, because Skip Bayless in his mind was saying, well, I don't need these guys anyway. I don't have to play good to these guys anyway, or placate to these guys anyway, because it's not like I do one-on-one interviews. All I do is debate the topics and talk about the stories. That's how I'm getting successful off of, not me trying to do one-on-one interviews and trying to establish a relationship with the athletes. But Stephen A. Smith was at the Fort Road. He was still trying to maintain a relationship with the athletes, but also in tongue in cheek insult some of the other athletes. So Stephen A. Smith was caught in the crossfire. Stephen A. Smith, when he got to the crossroad, he was trying to placate both lanes till finally he couldn't do it no more. Because a lot of people don't realize Stephen A. Smith had a great relationship, and he still do with Shaq. He had when God rest his soul, Kobe Bean Bryant, he had a decent relationship with them. Um, and he had a great relationship. One of his first major athletes that he had a relationship with was with Allen Iverson, and he had a understanding with Allen Iverson, and they had great chemistry. And Allen Iverson would talk to him constantly about how he feels about the Philadelphia 76ers or whatnot. And Stephen A. Smith in the beginning was doing powder puff pieces for Allen Iverson to get people to understand, to gain awareness about Allen Iverson. And Allen Iverson does have some faults. Allen Iverson did have problems off the court mainly. But Stephen A. Smith was gravitated to Allen Iverson because he saw a lot of himself in Allen Iverson. Stephen A. Smith felt like if he had the talent of Allen Iverson, it probably would have propelled him into the professional rankings where he'll have a professional career as an NBA player. But he really had an understanding about Allen Iverson because Allen Iverson was going through the struggles and pains and things of that nature. And plus, Stephen A. Smith was a resident in Philadelphia, and he was the journalist for the Philadelphia 76ers. So he had a great relationship with with the athletes, had a great relationship with the organization of the Philadelphia 76ers, had a great relationship with Larry Brown. But Stephen A. Smith, like I said, was caught in the crossroads. He he tried to play both sides as long as he could, but ultimately he couldn't no more. And he just, if you want to call it the dark side, he started to turn his back on a lot of athletes. He once had a great relationship with LeBron James, and that deteriorated because LeBron James found someone else, that another Brian Windhorst. He started to communicate more with Brian Windhorst than Stephen A. Smith, because Stephen A. Smith, was insulting a lot of athletes. And, LeBron James started to gain awareness about, we're more than just an athlete. We have families, we have wives, we have responsibilities on and off the court and the field, and you shouldn't dictate us on a bad performance. And LeBron James echoed in the player empowerment movement well before it started hugely being massively popular, in sports entertainment and in sports media. But okay. So Jalen Rose didn't like it, and he stood up for those athletes that Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless would insult. And one day, uh, uh, Jalen Rose brought up Stephen A. Smith's stats. Skip Bayless's stats. And that was the turning point that was the turning point of, Skip Bayless no longer wanting Jalen Rose back on First Take. Okay. And that started, a bad relationship with Stephen A. Smith, and Skip Bayless and Jalen Rose. Okay, so after that, they started. First Take is still blowing up. They still getting ratings. This, that, and the third. Uh, you know, uh, Once again, Skip Bayless, he likes to say things to spark controversy, to spark talk, but to spark an algorithm of people just constantly bashing him, and constantly talking about the opinions that Skip Bayless made. And one of Skip Bayless's opinions that got him viral, hugely popular, is his stance with Tim Tebow. He felt like Tim Tebow could have a career in the National Football League because, but a lot of NFL analysts didn't believe it because they felt like Tim Tebow talent does not fit in the National Football League. So if your talent don't fit with the coach's schemes, if it doesn't fit with the coach's plans, if it just doesn't fit in traditional football, we're just gonna cast you to the side and let you play another position. And Skip Bayless was under the impression, no, if football would grow and develop with the times, time change with the times, and work with what Tim Tebow can bring to a football team. You know, Tim Tebow wasn't the most when you talk about his arm, it wasn't the most perfect arm. Tim Tebow, but Tim Tebow's leadership, Tim Tebow's presence, and Tim Tebow just creating plays on the field, a lot of coaches didn't want to placate to that. So uh, when Tim Tebow went to the Denver Broncos and John Elway was the executive over there, and he was getting constant pressure of starting Tim Tebow. And the narrative, what Skip Bayless was pushing at that particular time is, if NFL teams would work with the strengths of Tim Tebow instead of his weaknesses, they will win more games. And guess what happened? Tim Tebow started winning games. He just wins, wins, wins. And that was Skip Bayless's narrative, and it sort of ticked off the powers that be in the National Football League. And a lot of NFL fans, as well as the people that are working in National Football League, was not a fan of Skip Bayless's Tim Tebow just wins, wins, wins. All right. Y'all got to understand, at that particular time, the NFL was not changing with the times. It's either you got it or either your talent doesn't, if your talent doesn't fit with the system, with the coach, then you're just going to have to play a different position. Okay. Coaches was not going to bend for the athletes. The athletes had to bend for the coaches, for the schemes, for the systems, okay, for the offensive coordinator. Tim Tebow was kind of the first NFL player that talent, he wasn't a traditional quarterback, but there's a lot of qualities about Tim Tebow that if you put him in the right situation and if you scheme to Tim Tebow's strengths, you can win a lot of football games. And a lot of people were turned off by Skip Bayless, pushing that narrative. And, Tim Tebow was winning games. The National Football League slowly but surely started changing with the times. And now you get all of these extraordinary, I'm going to be honest with you. A lot of people don't give Skip Bayless credit or don't give him his flowers. But if Skip Bayless wasn't, supporting Tim Tebow that way, there would have been a lot of great NFL quarterbacks that would have to play tight end or wide receiver because they don't fit the mold of a traditional quarterback that just drops back and just throws, you know. But I give Skip Bayless his flowers. He was really pushing that, and the NFL had a problem with Skip Bayless pushing that narrative. And of course, the NFL, uh, issued these problems and concerns with ESPN. And then slowly but surely, the powers that be at ESPN pulled back a lot of those Tim Tebow segments and got a Skip Bayless to, talk about, just don't stay focused on Tim Tebow too much because you're making the NFL look bad here. All right. So that was one of the concerns about First Take, but it wasn't a big concern. I think the Jalen Rose thing was a huge concern, but the Tim Tebow thing was a concern, but it wasn't a big concern. Now, Ray Rice, I mentioned that earlier. And when the Ray Rice incident was making its rounds, y'all have to also understand, social media wasn't social media like it is today. All right, where you can get videos, security videos, a lot quicker than you could back then. And in the beginning, when they was talking about Ray Rice, the video didn't come in. Okay, I mean, they were still investigating. The video didn't make its rounds. And Stephen A. Smith made a lot of comments about the Ray Rice incident, and a lot of women did not like it. I mean, and I'm not a woman, but I didn't like some of the comments Stephen A. Smith first made about the Ray Rice incident. All right. And Michelle Beadle was one of those women that was working at ESPN, and she started to was making a campaign like, hey, y'all should suspend Stephen A. Smith because he's pretty much endorsing domestic violence. All right. He's pretty much gaslighting domestic violence and and this, that, and the third. And Michelle's Beadle was saying that a lot of women on ESPN started to echo those sentiments. And that's when it started getting gaslighted. It started going viral. And then I can remember it like it was yesterday. TMZ Sports reported that Stephen A. Smith has been suspended. So Stephen A. Smith immediately ran back to ESPN and apologized. And I'm gonna be honest with you guys, if he didn't apologize on national television, there was a lot of talk out there that Stephen A. was going to be fired by ESPN. That's how serious it got. And you got to also understand, women started to integrate more and more and more, particularly with sports. All right. There were women that was watching sports before all this, but when sports started getting popular and when a lot of these leagues were promoting breast cancer awareness a month and the pink jerseys, and their advertisers are promoting their products to women, their leagues to women. Women buy tickets too. Women go to games too. Women watch sports too. And Stephen A. Smith pretty much put his foot in the mouth, put his own foot in his mouth. And like I said, if he didn't go on ESPN and apologize, he would have lost his job. He was definitely going to lose his job. All right. So Stephen A. Smith was suspended, and when he got back from suspension, he apologized even more. But uh, at that particular time, First Take started to get in a lot of hot water. And the powers that be, at first, what made First Take so popular was them being edgy, with them saying what they want to say, with them bashing athletes and saying, whatever. They were sort of over the fence on that. ESPN started to, and at that particular time, it was so popular. First Take, they were talking about doing an afternoon show of First Take. All right. But and then before we get into this, the viral moment with Skip Bayless and oh my God, I forgot that guy's name already. Played, he was the cornerback for the San Francisco, I mean for the Seattle Seahawks. Richard Sherman, that viral moment uh, really put First Take in a bad light and had a bad taste in ESPN's mouth. The powers that be pulled Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith to the side and said, "Hey, look, we're going to have to tone down a lot of the stuff that we do on First Take, because now First Take is so popular. It's got so much attention. It's got so many eyeballs on it. Now everybody's watching First Take. Uh, Now we're getting different communities and different groups that is watching First Take are starting to get insulted by what we're televising on First Take. So we're going to have to take it a step back. Okay. And this was the era where, ESPN was telling the personalities at ESPN and then this is when Disney still owned ESPN, and I think Disney had a hand in this as well. There was toning back what they can say on ESPN. They didn't want a lot of the ESPN analysts to talk about politics or talk about or bashing players and bashing leagues and things of that nature, because they're making their money from these leagues. And a lot of these leagues showcase these athletes. And also at that particular time, LeBron James, as well as other athletes, were promoting this player empowerment, and players have the right to defend themselves, particularly when sports analysts are making fun of them and changing their names around, making it funny and talking about their wives and talking about their children. That's when you know I sort of call it, I coined it the LeBron James movement. It was other athletes that were promoting player empowerment, but the most popular face in players empowerment was LeBron James. And it just wasn't the National Basketball Association, it was the NFL. A lot of these guys were pushing back and pushing against Stephen A. Smith and Stephen A. Smith. So ESPN had to scale it back a little bit for First Take, and that's when Stephen A. Smith, Skip Bayless, had to watch what he said on watch what he says on television, and that kind of irritated Skip Bayless. Skip Bayless was used to an environment where he could say whatever he wanted it to say. Stephen A. Smith had to watch what he said, because remember, he almost lost his job on that Ray Rice incident. So Stephen A. Smith was scaling it back some. And I remember Skip Bayless making this comment like, ESPN now they put you got to watch what you say, you have to tread very lightly. I can't be myself. I can't say what I want. Even Colin Cowherd was talking about ESPN. And Colin Cowherd was in the news. He had some controversy talking about pitchers in Major League Baseball and pitchers from different countries, and it seems like Latin players or players from other countries, they don't have to they're not pushed to be forced to speak our language. We sort of have to speak theirs or communicate around them or whatnot. And Colin Cowherd got in some hot water about that, and Stephen A. Smith and ESPN slapped his hand as well. Well, a lot of the former executives of ESPN who were let go of ESPN for allegedly sexual harassment started to go to Fox Sports 1. And before Fox Sports 1 got these old executives of ESPN, Fox Sports 1, it was a dead network, folks. I'm gonna be honest with you. Fox Sports 1, before they started getting popular, it was a dead network. It was the network where you could see college football on Saturday, you see tennis on Sunday, and you see rodeo for the rest of the week. That's how bad Fox Sports 1 was. It was a dead man walking network, and they were in dire straits. They had to make a change and make it fast. So they hired all of the old executives at ESPN who was let go of, allegedly sexual harassment. I think his name was Jamie Horrocks. I think I may be butchering his name, but anywho, so he went to Fox Sports 1 and was given an opportunity to change the culture of Fox Sports 1. They were not going to stop him. And over at Fox Sports 1, just like Fox News, they allow you to say whatever you want to say. Okay, Fox News, they had Candace Owens. Fox News, green lighted Stacey Dash. Stacey Dash was the token black woman that talked bad about the black community. They gave her a mic and allowed her to disrespect the black community and Candace Owens and those types of individuals. So the Fox network, they allow you to say what you want to say, do what you want to do, as long as you getting the ratings. They don't give a damn. And you have to understand, Fox Sports 1, it was a dying network. They had no choice. It wasn't like there was other options on the table. So Jamie, I think his name is Jamie, he was from ESPN, let go of ESPN of sexual harassment. He rebranded Fox Sports 1. And one of his big acquisitions of over there at Fox Sports 1, he started purging talent from ESPN because he had great relationships with Rob Parker. Rob Parker was let go of ESPN ages ago, but that's neither here nor there. He had a great relationship with Chris Broussard. He had a great relationship with Jason Whitlock. He had a great relationship with Skip Bayless, Colin Cowherd. You started to see a lot of those analysts that were at ESPN, sports personalities at ESPN, started getting purged away from their network, and now they're signing to Fox Sports 1. And one of the selling points that Jamie was how he was getting these people saying, hey, over here at Fox Sports 1, you can say what you want to say. All right. As long as you get the clicks, as long as you get the ratings, we don't put filters on people's mouths here. You get to say what you want to say. And plus, he was overpaying a lot of these people. The Nick Wrights, the Chris Carters, the Jason Whitlocks. He was overpaying for Colin Cowherd. He was overpaying for Skip Bayless, Chris Broussard, Rod Parker. He was overpaying because of their name. All right. And he was in a position where he had to turn this around very, very quickly. And in the beginning, everything was looking good for Fox Sports 1. The Herd Show moved from ESPN to Fox Sports 1, got hugely, massively successful. But one of the most flagship shows that also got popular was Undisputed. Now, you had Speak for Yourself. That was another show Colin Cowherd created. And that was his afternoon show that he had with Jason Whitlock. We'll talk about that a little bit later. All right. But Stephen A. Smith, Undisputed. So Undisputed, they overpaid to get, like I said, they overpaid for all this talent. Some of it panned out, some of it didn't. Some of it, got them hugely successful. Others, they had issues with them. All right. But nevertheless, all right. So, Undisputed started, and that was Skip Bayless's show. He's the creator, he's the owner and operator of Undisputed. And when they were in the making of Undisputed, the executives over there at Fox Sports 1 wanted Skip Bayless to debate another columnist in media. And Jane was saying similar to what we had over there at First and 10 and First Take, where we had two columnists debating one another. All right. And that was the premise of Undisputed. And Skip Bayless said, well, that's fine and all, but I think I found my debate partner, and it was Shannon Sharpe. And at that particular time, Shannon Sharpe's name didn't resonate very well in the media's eyes, because you have to understand Shannon Sharpe's career in media. Now Shannon Sharpe was an extraordinary tight end for the Denver Broncos and the Baltimore Ravens, having an amazing, legendary career as a football player, as a tight end. When Shannon Sharpe transitioned from the National Football League as an athlete to a media personality, one of his first big breaks and first opportunities was CBS Sports. And he would do the pregame report in the morning for CBS Sports with Boomer Esiason, and the list goes on and on and on. And Shannon Sharpe was considered the young guy. He was, he's green around the collar when it comes to this media thing. But he mainly got the job at CBS Sports he mainly got the job at CBS Sports of his recent success with the Baltimore Ravens. And he's very charismatic, on and off the field. He's very entertaining. He's very funny. And I'm pretty sure in the interview process, he said the right things. He pushed the right buttons. He crossed the right checks and things of that nature. And CBS Sports thought that they had a hit with Shannon Sharpe. And Shannon Sharpe in the beginning was very humble that he got the opportunity. But as soon as he started gaining popularity, as soon he started coming out of his shell, as soon as he let go of all the filters, Shannon Sharpe was saying whatever he wanted to say, and it didn't matter if he offended anybody in the studio and even around the studio. Now, allegedly, Shannon Sharpe was having some flirtatious moments with another female worker at CBS Sports. And that was pretty much the downfall of Shannon Sharpe. All right. And y'all got to understand, in that particular era and at that particular time, it wasn't the Me Too movement, but a lot of women, particularly a lot of journalists, female journalists, they were on the helmet of Shannon Sharpe. Now, Shannon Sharpe would tell you this didn't happen. He didn't say nothing to this girl in the elevator. But the woman in question said that he made advances towards her that wasn't very professional. So it's a he said, she said moment. And unfortunately, back at that time, social media wasn't rampant. You just couldn't get the footage in the elevator to find out what actually happened, because you have to understand there was no market for that. Okay. And a lot of these incidents remain private and confidential, but CBS Sports knows what truly happened. Shannon Sharpe knows what truly happens, even though he's not, telling us. And the woman in question knows what happened. So only those three individuals know what happened. But you got to understand, social media wasn't like social media like it is now, where TMZ would literally buy the footage. All right. So Shannon Sharpe was let go by CBS Sports, and then he was making, he was trying to uh, recultivate his image, and it just wasn't a good look. Shannon Sharpe started bouncing around. He did some segments. It gotten so bad, which he did some segments with with the NFL Network. He did some segments with ESPN, First Take, and well, let me peel it back a little bit. He was doing segments with the NFL Network, started to get his name in motion again. He was on Twitch, talking about the pre-games and things of that nature. He was doing Twitch. He was anywhere he can get an opportunity or a job. Shannon Sharpe was going to take it because he had to rehabilitate himself, and there was just a stigma about him that was not true. All right, don't know if it was true, but allegedly everyone thinks it's true. But it's a he said she said type of situation. Anywho, he started making his rounds on First Take, like I said earlier, and he Skip Bayless started noticing the competitive juices of Shannon Sharpe. And they started to build a relationship and cultivate a relationship when he was doing certain segments for First Take. And when Skip Bayless went to Fox Sports 1 to create his own show, Skip Bayless told Shannon Sharpe that, hey, if I get an opportunity elsewhere and get my own show, you're going to be the first one I call because we have a very good relationship in the studio. I like the competitive juices. You're very competitive. You kind of remind me a little bit of Stephen A. Smith, but younger. Uh, we can do some great work together. And he kept Shannon Sharpe in the loop, particularly when he got the opportunity and got the job at Fox Sports 1, and he brought his own show, Undisputed. And that's how Undisputed was formed. Now, the powers that be at Fox Sports 1, Jamie, I think his name was Jamie Horrocks. I could be 100% wrong, but he used to work at ESPN. They was not feeling this dynamic between Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharpe. Well, after a couple of practice sessions, they started to see the potential in Shannon Sharpe. Now, this is the same group that Skip Bayless had to get them to understand Stephen A. Smith. And this is the same group that was not very favorable of Stephen A. Smith. But when they started seeing Stephen A. Smith on First and Take, started to shine there, then they said, okay, it resonated with everybody. Okay, I see what you see, Skip Bayless, in Stephen A. Smith. And Stephen A. Smith got the opportunity to do First and Take and First Take for the permanent uh you know get a per host for First Take. So Shannon Sharpe, Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharpe formed Undisputed. They're doing extraordinary things. Everyone coined First Take, Undisputed, the First Take killer. And when they started purging a lot of the talent from First Take to Fox Sports 1, it was a dark time for Fox, ESPN, because ESPN also had to let go. Some of the people that they let go of ended up on Fox Sports 1, and a lot of the people that they didn't want to get rid of just came to Fox Sports 1. And you started seeing Fox Sports 1 get hugely popular with these recent signings. All right. Y'all and some of y'all probably gonna remember this. First Things First was the first show in the morning for Fox Sports 1. That was the setup show, and that was Nick Wright. I said Rick Wright, Nick Wright, and Chris Carter and Jenna Wolf, and that dynamic was the setup. And First Things First in the morning, people would gravitate to that show, but then people would stay and watch also Undisputed, which was also a huge hit for Fox Sports 1 that had Shannon Sharpe and Skip Bayless. All right. And they had different moderators over the course of time, but the first moderator was Joy Taylor. All right. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And then you had the Herd Show. All right. The Herd Show. And then after the Herd Show was Speak for Yourself, it was Colin Cowherd and Jason Whitlock. And then that migrated into Jason Whitlock and oh God, I forgot that Marcellus Wiley. And we'll talk about all that a little bit later. All right. So ESPN, when they let go, when they had their layoffs, they had to let go of these people. They were trying to rehabilitate themselves. All right. They just lost a huge hole. Now they lost a lot of people over there at ESPN, and most of them they're not going to they're not going to lose any sleep over. But the two biggest individuals that they lost at ESPN that they're going to have a hard time replacing is Skip Bayless and Colin Cowherd. All right. It was a huge hole, a huge slot that needed to be filled. All right. So when they were going into the process, they imported Max Kellerman from Sports Nation, and Sports Nation had Marcellus Wiley, and Sports Nation had Michelle Beadle and Max Kellerman. They started seeing Max Kellerman making a presence on television, and they thought it was. And this decision was the powers that be. They merged Max Kellerman with Stephen A. Smith. Now, this was not Stephen A. Smith's choice, and this is where this was not Stephen A. Smith's choice, and this was not Stephen A. Smith's decision. Stephen A. Smith, like a good soldier, he worked with it. He tried to make it work, and it just seems like from day one, him and Max Kellerman could not see eye to eye or get along with one another. And the reason being is Max Kellerman moved he kind of moved on his own path. All right. Max Kellerman was not going to be a yes man for anybody. No matter who he's debating, Skip Bayless or whatever, he just not going to do that. All right. So Max Kellerman was the guy that was going to hold on one second. All right. Max Kellerman was going to replace Skip Bayless. And I remember doing videos on this, and I mentioned Max Kellerman's name, but I thought that was going to go a different direction. But obviously, this was not Stephen A. Smith's choice. And Stephen A. Smith was very resentful of Max Kellerman, not because of what Max Kellerman said. It was simple fact that they just put Max Kellerman together with Stephen A. Smith, and Stephen A. Smith didn't like it. Okay. And it wasn't Stephen A. Smith's choice. And then Stephen A. Smith was feeling feeling a different way because, wait a minute. So Skip Bayless leaves ESPN, starts his own show, and Stephen A. Smith gets to pick and gets to choose who he wants to debate with. Meanwhile, we're the best network. We have the best ratings. We're in more households than Fox Sports 1. And you mean to tell me I don't get an opportunity to pick who I want to debate with? You just want to mash both of us up together? I'm not going to say it was oil and water, but I will say Max Kellerman, he was not going to son Max Kellerman. I think in a perfect world, Stephen A. Smith wanted someone younger, someone that he can control, someone that he can mold, someone who's pretty much new, that he can just get his way with. Okay. In a perfect world, that's who he wanted. All right. And instead, he got Max Kellerman, a veteran who's very knowledgeable. He's very knowledgeable on boxing, which Stephen A. Smith tries to attempt to do boxing, but he doesn't do it at the level as Max Kellerman. Max Kellerman is highly decorated as a boxing analyst. All right. But I do feel like Max Kellerman had to ingratiate himself with the other sports, which is football, basketball. And I feel like he ingratiated himself the most when he was on Sports Nation with Marcellus Wiley. And him and Marcellus Wiley are cool. They like each other. They're compatible. They have great chemistry, as well as Michelle Beadle. Okay, there's no animosity between any of those three, and they was doing that in California. So Max Kellerman had to pack up, move to Bristol and to New York, and he had to move his family there. Now, luckily for Max, he used to live in New York. Okay, no big deal. And in the beginning, like I said, this was a match not made in heaven. And this was not a match that Stephen A. Smith wanted, but Stephen A. Smith was very professional about it and just worked along with it. And you can clearly tell when it comes to boxing, I feel like Max Kellerman got the edge over Stephen A. Smith. But when they talk about other topics, you can clearly tell Stephen A. Smith is way more knowledgeable about these subjects than Max Kellerman. And you can clearly tell that Max Kellerman was not built for a debate style television. Max Kellerman is sort of like the guy, that feel like he's the smartest guy in the room, says something very controversial, something that you have to think about for a second, or sometimes he'll say something that's totally stupid. But to Max Kellerman, he thinks this makes him more smarter than everyone else. All right, but Max Kellerman was not built for debate style television. And sometimes Stephen A. Smith will get irritated about it. All right. And Stephen A. Smith will have these battles with him. Like, Max Kellerman said that Tom Brady was on a cliff. And in the next couple of years, Tom Brady's not going to be able to play in the National Football League. And Stephen A. Smith kept bringing it up, like, well, how long Tom Brady's not going to be able to be in football? Because 2 years ago, you said he's supposed to be gone, and we're in his third year, all right? And he would try to push Max Kellerman to be argumented towards Stephen A. Smith. But, Max just simply was not built that way. Now, the major issue that Stephen A. Smith had with Max Kellerman, besides all that, is the time they had Terrell Owens on board. And Terrell Owens said something on First Take that really boiled the water of Stephen A. Smith. And this went viral. And I remember it live. I was watching it live. And Terrell Owens basically said that Max Kellerman is more blacker than you. And that really boiled the blood of Stephen A. Smith. Because you got to understand the position Stephen A. Smith was in. A lot of people, particularly on social media, on YouTube, Twitch, was pretty much saying this about Stephen A. Smith. Like, Stephen A. Smith would buck dance. Stephen A. Smith would, I'm not going to say the C word because I think that's so disrespectful, but y'all know what the C word is. And, he was under fire for that, as well as Kwame Brown was on the helmet, the neck of Stephen A. Smith. And I feel like Stephen A. Smith deserved that criticism from Kwame Brown because, it ain't fun when the rabbit got the gun. When Kwame Brown was young and he was a number one pick in the NBA, he couldn't really say too much. Stephen A. Smith, you would always go at the helmet of Kwame Brown, talking about he's a bust, he's garbage, he's he's this, he's that. Kwame Brown and all that stuff. Some of it was lighthearted, but the other stuff, the other criticism you had about Kwame Brown, I can understand why Kwame Brown has an issue with you. All right, but when you got the gun, it's okay. But when Kwame Brown have the gun, now it's a problem. All right. And Kwame Brown, a lot of people, in social media as well as in the media, would say that Stephen A. Smith is very hard with black athletes, and it's almost like Stephen A. Smith don't believe that he's black. That's the narrative everyone was pushing. Well, when T.O. said Max Kellerman is more blacker than you, that offended Stephen A. Smith, and I feel like Stephen A. Smith has every right to be offended. All right, And Stephen A. Smith went fast back at T.O. and was going at T.O. And then T.O. had to fall back a little bit and say that it was just a joke, which it was clearly not a joke. All right. And that was the last time we see T.O. on First Take. All right. Last time we see T.O. on First Take. But that comment drove a wedge. It drove a bigger wedge in Max Kellerman and Stephen A. Smith. And then Stephen A. Smith, uh, you know, just got tired of it and went to the office, went to the powers that be and said, hey, look, this is not working with me and Max Kellerman. Now, either he goes or I go. And they just moved Max Kellerman. He was still under contract. They just moved Max Kellerman to Keyshawn, J. Will, that morning show. And then he had that afternoon show, This Just In. And I told you guys when I found out, when that news dropped, I told you guys that This Just In is not going to make a full season. That when he that Keyshawn, J. Will, that Max thing, I didn't think that was going to work. And particularly when you're not even in the New York market. Okay. uh, their local show in New York is premiering when that show is premiering on ESPN, and it just wasn't a huge audience for those three individuals. All right. And I told you guys in that video, I just didn't see this lasting too long, and it would not surprise me none if he gets fired from ESPN. Well, he did over the summer. That's neither here nor there. All right. So, but anyway, Stephen A. Smith pushed Max Kellerman out of First Take. All right. And it mainly he pushed him out because he just didn't, the chemistry wasn't there. Max Kellerman wasn't, he didn't, the First Take debate style, Max Kellerman did not adopt that. They would talk about the sports topics, but Max Kellerman wouldn't really push too much on Stephen A. Smith. And he just wasn't compatible for Stephen A. Smith. As when you're doing debate shows, you want confrontation, you want energy, you just want that stuff because this is a debate show. And he was not getting that with Max Kellerman. And plus, Max Kellerman was not his pick. I'm pretty sure Stephen A. Smith has a pick, but he hasn't disclosed who his pick was. Pretty sure he's going to go into this sometime this week. Okay. But anywho, all right. So a lot of people, including myself, all knew that Stephen A. Smith got Max Kellerman fired. And Jason Whitlock was fast to say that when the news was brought out that Max Kellerman was not going to be on First Take. And Jason Whitlock, as well as others, said, well, the reason why he is out because Stephen A. Smith wanted him out. Now, in the beginning, it was a mutual understanding between Max and ESPN. But when Stephen A. Smith started to make his rounds on these podcasts, he gave us some inside knowledge that we all pretty much knew, that he went to management, he went upstairs and said that, hey, I don't want to work with Max Kellerman no more. All right. And he pretty much got Max Kellerman fired. Now, he tried to, say that, hey, I'm the executive producer. I make the decisions at First Take and this, that, and the third. And to me, he is the executive producer in title, but I don't think at that particular time, I don't think he controls who gets hired and who gets fired. Okay. Now, maybe in this recent contract that he's got 2 years left, he has a little bit more power on that. But initially, he was going through two different contracts when his latest contract, when he got Max Kellerman, and now this new contract, he worked with Max Kellerman a little while, but now Max Kellerman is not there. All right. So I don't know. Maybe he got a lot more control in this new contract where he dictates who was hired and who let go. But Max Kellerman was let go of clearly because Stephen A. Smith went to ESPN and said, "Hey, look, this contract's up, and before I sign the next contract, we got to get an understanding here. I do not want to work with Max Kellerman." All right. And I think it's partly because of the chemistry, but I think mainly Stephen A. Smith had a huge problem with T.O., Jason Whitlock, and everyone else spewing the narrative that, you know, uh, Max Kellerman is more blacker than Stephen A. Smith. Now, I don't believe that, but that was the narrative. All right. And that's why Max Kellerman was let go of. Okay. I feel mainly because of the first reason, but a lot of people want to use the second argument and the second reason. But anyway, and that's why Jason Whitlock has an issue with Stephen A. Smith, because the way how Stephen A. Smith is big boying and sunning everybody at ESPN, and he used to work there, and he has a friend still work over there at ESPN, and they have been giving them some inside knowledge of Stephen A. Smith. And Stephen A. Smith is getting a little bit too big for his britches. His ego is massive, and he dictates what he wants. Even though, let's just be fair, if it wasn't for Stephen A. Smith, I don't think ESPN would still have the legs that it still has today. Now, ESPN, I don't know if this was a collective effort, but ESPN, when they made some announcements before and after this major layoff, when they let go of Jalen Rose, they let go of a lot of people on this last layoff, and they hired Pat McAfee before those layoffs. And Pat McAfee is ushering in a new way of how ESPN it sees themselves in the future. And ESPN, even though they're late to the party, they realize that the age of digital cable, satellite TV and cable, is a thing of the past. Now everybody's going into streaming. Everyone buying these streaming services, and everyone is putting their money in these streaming services. And there's talk that ESPN may have an app for their ESPN shows, such as First Take and others. All right. So ESPN slowly but surely understands that the market has changed. No one's interested. Satellite and cable TV, more and more every day, people are pulling the cord, and now they're going into these streaming services. And ESPN, as of right now, they don't really have a leg to stand on when it comes to streaming service. Now they have ESPN Plus, and they've been really pushing ESPN Plus. But the problem with ESPN Plus is, and I feel like eventually this is going to happen, or they're just going to come up with a new streaming app. They're going to have to they're going to have to put a lot of their best shows from their cable and satellite programming into imported in ESPN Plus. Because just imagine if you got the 6 p.m. Sports Center, if you got First Take, you can watch hold on one second. You can watch ESPN, the 6 p.m. Sports Center on Plus. You can watch First Take on Plus. You can watch all the Pardon the Interruption, and I forgot that other show. Anyway, you can watch all of those shows on ESPN Plus, and you can also watch them shows on your satellite and your cable. All right. So I think ESPN is transitioning into the new landscape of how people get their entertainment. Either they're going to incorporate these shows on ESPN Plus, or they're just going to make a whole new app, and they're going to put the ESPN Plus content plus the content that they're getting from their channels. Okay. And that's why you're starting to see, I think they had a dispute with Charter Cable that has been resolved, and it's being resolved because they're going because those customers are also going to get ESPN Plus, and they had to renegotiate their contract with ESPN, and I knew that was going to happen particularly, the start of First Take with Skip and Shannon. All right. And that blew hell of high numbers. All right. So, but back to what we was talking about. Uh, yeah. So you know, Skip Bayless. I mean, First Take, they were doing their thing with Max Kellerman. Then they let go of Max Kellerman, and they said then Skip Bayless, I mean Stephen A. Smith wanted to do a show where he debates a different person each and every day. And he would have different personalities from the football, from professional football, different personalities from basketball. And that started to, get hugely popular with ESPN. Now, even when they had Max Kellerman, it was popular. But when they departed with Max Kellerman, and they had someone different like Tim Tebow, Irvin Magic Johnson. They had Michael Irvin. He had some big names that he would debate, even celebrities. ESPN started getting hugely popular. Okay. Now, back to Fox Sports 1, they labeled this the First Take killer. Skip and Shannon were together for 7 years, and of those 7 years, they didn't dethrone First Take. It just seemed like First Take got a lot better and got more ratings and more viewers when Skip and Shannon did Undisputed. But Undisputed cornered their own market because Undisputed was getting popular as well. It just wasn't as popular as First Take. All right. But it was still getting popular because people that love to hate Skip Bayless, they still came to see the show to hear what Skip Bayless was going to say. But Shannon Sharpe was getting hugely popular. I mean, hugely popular. People would gravitate to the show to see Shannon Sharpe going to his skits and mixing drinks and having a black and mild in his mouth. Shannon Sharpe was the entertainment portion of, you know, Undisputed. And you got to see the character of Uncle Shay Shay, more than ever on Undisputed. Well, it was turning Undisputed. Yeah, they still had the debates and stuff like that, but what really got Undisputed going was what Shannon Sharpe, the outlandish takes Shannon Sharpe would say, and the stuff that he would do on Undisputed. And slowly but surely, at first, Shannon Sharpe was trying to get his feet wet the first couple of years. I say about 2 or 3 years, getting his feet wet. And, he's still loyal to the soil to Skip Bayless. And, he's still showing love to Skip Bayless and respecting Skip Bayless. But when, Shannon Sharpe started smelling his own funk, he's going like, wait a minute. I don't even, you know, why do I need to just scale back? I just need to be more of me. And that's what he ultimately become. And he got so popular, and more people would constantly say this. The only reason why we watch Undisputed is because of Shannon Sharpe. Now, did it irritate Skip Bayless? Yes. Was Skip Bayless was jealous? Yes. Okay. Did Skip Bayless have a little sense of animosity towards Shannon Sharpe? Yes. But Skip Bayless saw the bigger picture. And the bigger picture was, people was gravitating to Undisputed clearly to watch the antics of Shannon Sharpe. So Skip Bayless at first was placating to this. All right. And they will have their moments. They'll have their ups and downs, just like, anybody would, when you're working with somebody for so long. But Shannon Sharpe and his agent was saying to Fox Sports 1, okay, his contract is coming up, and if y'all want us to renegotiate with if y'all want Shannon Sharpe to renegotiate with Fox Sports 1, Shannon Sharpe has done enough and has proven that he's the one that's getting the ratings for Undisputed. Therefore, my client, Shannon Sharpe, wants that A tier type of money. He wants the same type of money Stephen A. Smith is making at First Take. He wants the same type of money that Skip Bayless is making at Fox Sports 1. Plus, he wants some say so in the show. And he wants a little bit more control of the show. And that was starting the fall of them, no longer doing Undisputed together. Fox Sports 1, now they're under a different regime. The other regime that brought Skip Bayless over there and got Shannon Sharpe over there, they're no longer there because, once again, some allegedly sexual harassment issues, and Jamie had to go on his merry way. They're under a new regime, and this new regime likes Skip Bayless. And the new regime thinks that, well, the only reason why Undisputed is so popular is Skip Bayless. And they're just downplaying Shannon Sharpe. Now, I feel like this old regime is not very knowledgeable of how social media works, of the algorithm of social media, but Shannon Sharpe is big on social media. And I feel like a lot of his audience from social media was coming in droves to see him on Undisputed. And I think the new regime didn't care or didn't understand how social media works. And they was just looking at Skip Bayless like, okay, Skip Bayless is the reason why he's getting these ratings. We're going to max him out to another contract. Well, you also got to you have to understand that as popular as Undisputed is, as popular as First Take is, as popular as all of these sports shows is, at the end of the day, when you look at cable and satellite TV, now more than ever, people are pulling the plug. They're no longer invested in satellite and cable television. Okay. And therein lies the struggle. And a lot of these networks, it's not just Fox Sports 1, it's not just ESPN, but it's CNN. You starting to Discovery. You're starting to see all of these networks downsizing some. All right, because of not a lot of people are buying satellite and cable television. A lot of people are going into the streaming services. All right. And a lot of shows that are on these streaming services are more popular than the shows that are on cable and satellite. All right. Yellowstone, which was hugely popular on streaming services, they made it official that now they're going to show the first episodes of Yellowstone on the CBS network for satellite. I mean, for cable and satellite. Okay. So that's how popular these streaming services shows and these streaming services are. They're just the new wave of how you're going to watch your entertainment. Well, when you look at CNN, when you look at Fox News, when you look at ESPN, when you look at Fox Sports 1, they they don't really have a huge market in streaming services. Their biggest market is in cable and satellite. So now a lot of these places are downsizing. It just wasn't ESPN. Everybody was downsizing. Okay, Fox Sports 1 downsized a couple of years ago. They got rid of Jason Witt. They got rid of a lot of personalities on Fox Sports 1. And this trend is going to continue because everyone is now transitioning from cable and satellite to streaming services. And now the biggest audience is in the streaming services. And now these networks, they're at the crossroads. Are we going to still continue to have shows on satellite and cable? Or are we just going to just go full throttle and go to the streaming outlet? Now, I think streaming is going to be the new way of media. Okay, but that's another time for another story. All right. So a lot of people were feeling the pinch, and I feel like Shannon Sharpe's contract came at a bad time. When Stephen A. Smith's contract was up, there was some hope for satellite and cable TV. That's why they gave him the bag. When Skip Bayless's contract was up, you started to see a downcline, but you still had hope that maybe cable and satellite TV will turn it around. Because remember, when Skip Bayless got his second bag from Fox Sports 1, there was talk that Skip Bayless was going to go to another network, another streaming service. He was going to another streaming service, excuse me. And there was talk about him doing that, and as well as going back to ESPN. And there was some talk out there that if he comes back to ESPN, they're going to have him on the networks for digitals, for satellite and cable TV, as well as ESPN Plus. Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless were going to do a show on ESPN Plus, and ESPN was so desperate they was telling Skip Bayless, you can still do Undisputed, okay? And the only reason why come he didn't do that deal, because he's a lot older. His wife is used to the California lifestyle. She's not going to uproot, move from California to go to New York. She done been there and done that. And if you look at the money is almost the same. So enjoy the California lifestyle with Fox Sports 1 and Undisputed, or make this change and go to ESPN. Now you got to work twice as hard. You got to be on ESPN on satellite and cable. Then you got to do ESPN Plus. They also said that they was going to feature him and Stephen A. Smith on a lot of sports events like the Super Bowl, the NBA Finals, and things of that nature. They had an incredible package for Skip Bayless, but Skip Bayless just chose Fox Sports 1. Okay. And I feel like the real reason why he chose Fox Sports 1, he's a lot older. His wife doesn't want to be uprooted. And if the money's almost similar, why just stay where you're at? All right. But that's neither here nor there. So, but at that time, Skip Bayless, even though you started seeing a downcline of people pulling away from cable TV and satellite, there was still hope that maybe Fox Sports 1, ESPN, after they do these deals, people would change and go back to digital and satellite cable, and it didn't happen. All right. So Stephen A. Smith got his bag, Skip Bayless got his bag, but not Shannon Sharpe. When Shannon Sharpe contract was up, which was not this summer, but last summer, his contract was up last summer, not this summer. Okay. At that particular time, the choice was clear. Everyone was going to the streaming networks. And Fox Sports 1 was saying to themselves, okay, why? Okay, we're giving Skip Bayless this big bag. ESPN just got Pat McAfee. They're giving him a bag. They're still giving Stephen A. Smith a bag, even though Stephen A. Smith got 2 years remaining on his contract. And there's talk that Stephen A. Smith is going to be done with ESPN. Not unless if he goes back to ESPN, it's going to be for a lesser amount and lesser years. All right. That's why you're starting to see Stephen A. Smith go into this YouTube thing. He has his own YouTube channel. But if Stephen A. Smith was smart, he would have created this YouTube channel many moons ago. But that's neither here nor there. He's there. Okay. So Fox Sports 1 is saying, okay, if everything's going to streaming, we don't really have a platform or a market in streaming, let alone an app for Fox Sports 1 where you can stream there as well as too. We don't really have a market for that. We may have a small market, but we don't have a huge market for that. Why are we maxing out Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharpe? So that's what was on the table. Now, a lot of people feel like Shannon Sharpe was let go of because of Skip Bayless and the recent tension between the two. But that is further from the truth. I think a large reason why Shannon Sharpe is not with Fox Sports 1 is because, he asked for that money at the wrong time when he should have asked for that money 3 years ago. Now you're asking for the money when it's clear that the viewership is in streaming. Okay, it's not in cable and satellite no more. It's, slowly but surely that's going to die. Okay, and definitely you're talking to a bunch of people that don't understand the nuances of social media, how it works, how in turn, if you have a social media presence, it builds your other platforms in other areas. They either don't know about social media or they just don't care. And I think they don't care about social media. It doesn't matter how, and I said this, Shannon Sharpe could have 5 million followers on social media, but it means a hill of beans to the executives at Fox Sports One because they're looking at it like, how does these 5 million followers that you have on social media is transitioning into Fox? I mean, watching Undisputed on Fox Sports One. I mean, that's great for you, but what? How does that benefit me? Okay, so I feel like bad timing with Shannon Sharpe asking for the money, and then I also feel like uh, you know, Stephen A. Smith is making these rounds on these podcasts again, and I'm gonna give credit where credit is due. Uh, it's called Top Sports Debate. They made a video about this, and they talked about the possibility of Shannon Sharpe being fired by Fox Sports One. Now, Stephen A. Smith is making the rounds that the real reason why Shannon Sharpe is no longer at Undisputed is real simple, is because he got fired by Fox Sports One. And um top sports debate, they talked about this briefly. So I'm gonna give them credit where credit is due. I always was on the fast. I was always on the notion of this was a money thing. It had less to do with Shannon Sharpe and Skip Bayless arguing on live television. It had more to do with uh, Fox Sports One just didn't see it a need to max out two people when their viewership is transitioning and they're putting all their money in streaming services. So why max these two out when we're not going to get the best of both worlds? Plus, if we max both of these two out, they still not beating First Take. First Take is still beating them in more households and in more markets. So, okay, why max these guys out? And this is the ratings we're going to get. Okay. But shout out to Top Sports Debate. They had an argument of Shannon Sharpe was fired by Undisputed. And there's a lot of reports out there, and I can't confirm nor deny these reports, but there's a lot of reports out there that the powers that be at Fox Sport One was not too kind. They were not too friendly with Shannon Sharpe, and they started to build a distrust with Shannon Sharpe. Slowly but surely, Shannon Sharpe was becoming a problem at Fox Sports One. Now, uh, you can blame Stephen A. The antics between him and Stephen A. Smith on live television, how it sometimes got personal. You can contribute this to why they ultimately made that decision, but it seems like Shannon Sharpe just distrust the powers that be at Fox Sports One because Fox Sports One was not going to give him that A-tier contract, and obviously that irritated Shannon Sharpe. Okay, then Shannon Sharpe made the comments, and I talked about the comments about him and Brett Favre, and now that made the rounds because it was one point of time Brett Favre was going to sue Shannon Sharpe. And they thought that was just the wrong type of energy or the wrong type of news to engage with. All right. Particularly when, look, Undisputed is not the First Take killer. It's not the best show in sports entertainment. It's the second best show, even with Skip and Shannon. Then on top of that, your contract is up. You want max money. And it was just the right ingredients for the perfect storm for Shannon Sharpe. Okay. Now you got Brett Favre possibly trying to sue you. I think that has been thrown out of court. But still, the notion of Brett Favre suing you is just not a good look for Fox Sports One. And then I feel like on top of you're negotiating your contract, you want A tier type of money. And then the final cherry to the sundae was the incident with you and the Grizzly players when the Los Angeles Lakers and the Grizzlies were playing, and you started to become the story instead of the actual game. You're getting into it with John Morant. You're getting into it with several Memphis Grizzly players. You're getting into it with John Morant's father. You're getting into it with the staff with the Memphis Grizzlies. And they now there's reports out there that said he was kicked out of that game. But since he's Shannon Sharpe, he's somebody. If he was just a regular fan, he would have been kicked out. But since he's Shannon Sharpe, they told him to just leave and go to the back and take a break from everything, calm down, and then return to the game. All right. But obviously Shannon Sharpe was trying to be the story instead of the actual story, the Memphis Grizzlies and the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, for the record, John Morant, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of news concerning John Morant. It ain't good. I think John Morant put himself in that predicament. I think his father, who, was a fan, now if y'all want to say he should have been more of a father than a fan, then that's fine. His father, is not in a good light right now, and now when there's reports out there that's surfacing that John Morant was on a path of destruction and nobody wasn't stopping him from doing it, it kind of, and I remember Shannon Sharpe saying, like, you need to be more of a father than a fan. Well, and it's starting to prove Shannon Sharpe's point was right and accurate, but at that particular time, we just didn't have enough there. And I felt like the NBA, as well as Fox Sports One, thought this was embarrassing that a sports personality is arguing with NBA players and NBA coaches and NBA staffers. Okay. And this could have went left real fast, real quick. So, they restrained it the best of their ability. But this was totally embarrassing for the NBA and for Fox Sports One. Now I know John Morant is also embarrassing, and I know the father. If y'all want to go and lean on the father some, that's fine and dandy. I'm just telling you, Shannon Sharpe is an employee of Fox Sports One, and that looks bad for Fox Sports One. It really looks bad for the NBA, but it also looks terribly bad for Shannon Sharpe, particularly when you're in a contract season. All right. And particularly when the network really don't want to give you max money because they're saying to themselves, hey, if we give him max money, it still doesn't mean we're going to overtake ESPN First Take in the ratings. And also, if we give him max money, if he's acting a fool on what we're giving him now, just imagine what bigger fool he's going to be when he gets max money. All right. And I know a lot of people hate Skip Bayless. I know a lot of people don't like his antics. I know a lot of people don't like his takes. But I feel like with Skip Bayless, what you're getting from Skip Bayless and what you're getting with Shannon Sharpe is two different cadences. All right. Skip Bayless tries to stay out of the limelight. That's why you don't see Skip Bayless at any shows. You don't see Skip Bayless at any events. You just see Skip Bayless go to Undisputed, then go home. Now, is it a boring life? Yeah, you might can look at it as a boring life, but Skip Bayless stays scathed from the TMZs and the 24-hour news cycle, and the blog pages and things of that nature, where when you look at Shannon Sharpe, he's out and about. He goes to parties, he goes to clubs, he goes to these sporting events. He's very public with his life, and Skip Bayless is very private in his life. And it was just too much risk for Fox Sports One to max out Shannon Sharpe. And I still feel like Shannon Sharpe was let go of. But like I said, Top Sports Debate really softened my opinion about that. Uh, about that, he may have been actually fired from Fox Sports One. And that's why he's no longer with Fox Sports One. And that's why the narrative that Stephen A. Smith is saying out by Fox Sports One. And that's why Jason Whitlock is saying, wait a minute, he didn't get the wording is off. He didn't get pushed out by Fox Sports One. He was fired by Fox. Now, Jason Whitlock didn't go all the way in, but Jason Whitlock says if Stephen A. Smith and Shannon Sharpe continue their attack on Skip Bayless and on this narrative that Shannon Sharpe got pushed out, he got receipts, and he's going to unleash them receipts if they continue this up. Now, Shannon Sharpe didn't really mention anything too much, particularly about him and Skip Bayless. He hasn't been talking about him and Skip Bayless, and I think that's partly due to the buyout. Maybe he can't say too much about Fox Sports One. Maybe, and he does still to this day. He still respects Skip Bayless. He really do appreciate Skip Bayless giving him his break, and he hasn't really said nothing bad about Skip Bayless. But with Stephen A. Smith has been making rounds on his YouTube channel, and I think he's doing this to get subscribers and to get viewership and to get ratings. When Undisputed debuted a week earlier than First Take, they came out with their dream team. It wasn't as big as what Fox Sports One was hoping for or Skip Bayless was hoping for. And Stephen A. Smith immediately started talking about the dream team. Then he got into some stories about Skip Bayless, and then he talked about how when Skip Bayless and Richard Sherman was talking about that viral moment when they were simulcast, and Richard Sherman was going in on Skip Bayless. Stephen A. Smith said that Skip Bayless said the reason why he couldn't go too in on Richard Sherman is because First Take was under a lot of hot water. They was on probation. Because of the comments that Stephen A. Smith made about Ray Rice. Stephen A. Smith got on his show and said, well, it was not only me, I wasn't the only one that put us on probation, on timeout. I mean, you and that Tim Tebow thing. But when you look at the Tim Tebow, yes, I think ESPN was kind of annoyed by the Tim Tebow talk and the Tim Tebow campaign Skip Bayless was doing, because it was putting ESPN in a weird position with the NFL. And the NFL is a traditional league, and they only think one way. They're not innovational when it comes to athletes, And like I said, and I said this earlier, a lot of people are not going to give Skip Bayless his props, but Skip Bayless ushered in this new NFL where in the early days of the NBA, in the NFL, if you was athletic and you wanted to be a quarterback, they would tell you, well, you don't have the arm to be a quarterback. Won't you play wide receiver or tight end? or play special teams or go on defense. Okay. Now, with this new era of the NFL, if you're athletic and you want to be a quarterback, they're going to transition to what you want to be in, what you want to be. If you believe that you're a quarterback, I feel like a lot of these quarterbacks today, if I feel like they owe something to Skip Bayless, to the point of Skip Bayless was on a public campaign to promote Tim Tebow, because Tim Tebow did not fit the box of a traditional quarterback. All right. So I think a lot of these quarterbacks, these athletic quarterbacks today, owe something to Skip Bayless, because Skip Bayless was putting it out there like, hey, Tim Tebow may not be a traditional quarterback, but he just wins. There's more ways to skin a cat other than dropping back and throwing the ball. You can win, or you can have an impact on the game other ways than just dropping back and throwing the ball. All right. So I feel like in a large portion, a lot of these athletic quarterbacks owe something to Skip Bayless, but hey, to each his own. Everyone probably thinks he doesn't, but I'm just saying. All right. So, yeah. So, back to this, back to, yeah, Stephen A. Smith made some comments, and he's still making comments about Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharpe, but now he's more so with Shannon Sharpe and Fox Sports 1. And now it's clear to Stephen A. Smith that Fox Sports 1 fired Shannon Sharpe. Now, Shannon Sharpe is not going to say what actually happened, and maybe Shannon Sharpe is embarrassed by what actually happened. He just don't want it out, or maybe there's some language in this buyout that says that he can't talk further about it. But shout out to Top Sports Debate. They are the ones that said he got fired. At first I was thinking it was a money thing. It was a dispute over the contract. They couldn't work out the dispute, so they said the best thing to do is just to go our separate ways. But I can see and understand why they think that he got fired, and I really do believe he actually got fired. Okay. And he's not the first person that got fired, particularly at Fox Sports 1. Chris Carter, when he didn't like how they was going to do the football pregame and the broadcasting. They promised Chris Carter that they was going to integrate him into the pregame or whatever. And there was a dispute there. Chris Carter went to the offices, and it got very heated and very argumented, and the security team escorted Chris Carter off the premises. Now later we found out he got fired. Okay. But this right here, there, as far as Shannon Sharpe being fired, there's a possibility that he did get fired. And I think personally, as a human being, we're all human, right? I don't think nobody wants to know that they got fired from their job. That's just me. I'm like, some people just don't want to know when they failed at something, and I think that's what's going on here. All right. I'm just playing around with something. I had something pulled up I was going to talk to you guys about, but I can't pull it up. But it's all good in the hood. Let me take a real quick drink. And we're about to wrap this up. So that's why there's tension between Jason Whitlock and Stephen A. Smith. Jason Whitlock had an issue with Stephen A. Smith when Stephen A. Smith wanted to do things different, coming from print media, just like Jason Whitlock. Jason Whitlock is sort of older school than Stephen A. Smith. And Jason Whitlock honored the people in print media. When they did the sports reporters, and you look at all those guys that were on that set, they came from print media. All the guys and girls came from print media, and they was the old school. And they had uh, they had a united front. There was a united front. It was all for one, and they was all for one another. And when Stephen A. Smith got his big break, Stephen A. Smith, even though he came from print media, he let the world know that he's made for television. Remember, Stephen A. Smith had his, quite frankly, nighttime show. He was doing gigs for that soap. I forgot that soap show that he had a guest appearance in. Stephen A. Smith was, even though he came from print media, he let the world know that he's a television star. He's a movie star. When he didn't hire a sports agent. Stephen A. Smith hired a Hollywood agent. All right. And you can tell Jason Whitlock and Stephen A. Smith, they didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things. And Stephen A. Smith sort of abandoned the print media crowd. Stephen A. Smith started, you know, galvanizing with the television crowd. So you can clearly tell Jason Whitlock and Stephen A. Smith, they don't like each other. They don't respect one another's work. Now, they may say the right things when they're on television or on their YouTube channels, but I don't think I think Jason Whitlock has a disdain for Stephen A. Smith, and I think Stephen A. Smith, has a disdain for him as well, because they come from two different eras. Even though they're sort of in the print media era, when Stephen A. Smith was in the print media era, the print media era was not dominating anymore. Television was the new way of entertainment, similar to like what streaming is today versus satellite and cable television. Satellite and cable television, that's the old way of media. Now streaming is the new media, and everybody's gravitating to that. So that's why there's tension between Jason Whitlock and Stephen A. Smith. And I feel like uh Jason Whitlock is more for Skip Bayless, because he's sort of from that old crowd of media, from the print media. And Skip Bayless makes no stones about it. He started his media persona in print media, and he always gives it up to print media, even though print media doesn't exist. Well, it exists, but it's not dominant like it was back in the day. But Skip Bayless always shows appreciation to print media and give opportunities from people that comes from print media to and he supports them. All right. Where with Stephen A. Smith, he came from print media, but he really doesn't have a huge history in print media. The majority of Stephen A. Smith's career in media is from television to streaming to social media. All right. So that's why those two are at odds at one another. And I think Shannon Sharpe and Skip Bayless are the pawns. All right. And I just feel like ultimately we're not going to know what really, really transpired until, Shannon Sharpe, just tells the world what actually happened. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't think Fox Sports 1 is going to release a statement. They're happy with their decision. They're moving on. And I really do think if you can catch Shannon Sharpe in a room by himself and the cameras are off, and you can have a personal conversation with Shannon Sharpe, I, I believe Shannon Sharpe wants to still remain over there at Undisputed. And I also think that if Shannon Sharpe can do it over again, he would do things differently. He would say things differently. And I've said this on countless videos and countless live streams. I really do appreciate all the success that Shannon Sharpe is doing. Club Shay Shay, the podcast, is now associated with The Volume. The Volume is a digital network that Colin Cowherd created. Shout out to Shannon Sharpe for doing that. He's also going to be doing additional content for the volume. Shannon Sharpe still doing Club Shay Show on his YouTube channel. Now he's doing Nightcap. So shout out to Shannon Sharpe doing that. He's got his appearance on First Take. He does Monday and Tuesdays. Shout out to him doing that. Occasionally we might see him on Fridays. But I'm going to be honest with you guys. All those recent announcements, congratulations to Shannon Sharpe. But I think he took a step backwards, because ultimately the biggest money he could have possibly made was with Fox Sports 1 or with another network. And it goes without saying, and I always said this, remember all the rumors that Apple may be bidding for the services of Shannon Sharpe and Amazon and FanDuel. And if he had those opportunities on the table, he would have took those opportunities on the table. Even ESPN is going to throw a bag at him. And if he had those opportunities, he would have took those opportunities. He wouldn't take the opportunities that he's got right now. Obviously, Amazon is a $1 trillion corporation. FanDuel is no slouch. They throw money at people. ESPN, if they wanted Shannon Sharpe full time, wouldn't mind throwing money on him. They just gave a bag and a half to Pat McAfee. I think Shannon Sharpe is way more entertaining than Pat McAfee. But here's what Pat McAfee has that Shannon Sharpe doesn't have. And Pat McAfee has a presence on social media. He has the Pat McAfee Show. He's got, every Monday he gets to talk to Aaron Rodgers. He has that NFL networking. He used to be an NFL athlete. He does WWE. He's on social media. And when ESPN saw all that, they're saying like, okay, if we're going to move into the next generation of entertainment, we're going to have personalities that are ushering in that, plus are going that way as well. We need Pat McAfee on our network. And that's where Pat McAfee did it early, got it right. He took a small setback going this way, but look at Pat McAfee now. Pat McAfee is on ESPN. He's getting his money. And I felt like Shannon Sharpe took the long way around. He got hired, because he had to rehabilitate his name, his image, his career. Because before Undisputed, he was just bouncing around as a contributor. And Skip Bayless gave him his first big show since CBS Sports. And yes, he's embracing social media. He's into the podcast landscape. He's doing all that, but he had to take the longer approach because he had more of an up climb to change a lot of people's feelings about him. Whereas Pat McAfee didn't have to do that. Pat McAfee started from ground zero from social media. Now look at Pat McAfee. You look at Shannon Sharpe. He had to take the long approach around. He got hired. He got hired by Fox Sports 1 after, no one touching him with a 10-foot pole after CBS Sports debacle. He got hugely popular, hugely successful on Undisputed, and now he's doing Club Shay Shay and this, that, and the third. Now he's with ESPN and the volume, and he's doing more content on his YouTube channel. Congratulations to him, but he sort of took the long way around. Okay, so, yep, that's what's going on with Jason Whitlock, Stephen A. Smith, Shannon Sharpe, and Skip Bayless. They're all cut in the same cloth. They're all cut from the same cloth, but they just come, it's, to me, and like I said in the beginning, I'm not saying that I don't like any of them, but I'm not no huge fan of any of them. They all have their own flaws, and it is what it is. But yeah, that's pretty much all of Just My Opinion podcast, season 3, season 1. We're going to premiere these things every Monday morning. And hopefully you guys rate, comment, subscribe, share it with your friends, family, as well as your followers. Really do appreciate you guys coming in, stepping up. Support is real. If you want to support the channel even further, hit the join membership button. Remember, membership has its privileges. You can also do super chats, super stickers. You can also, if you are a Cash App person, hit the Cash App link. I don't have the link down below, but it's in the scroller down below. $ I'm Chris Don 1. I really appreciate everyone coming by. Next Monday, I'm going to have something very, very special. Who knows? I might have something special for you guys tomorrow. Guys, it's been real. It's been fun. It has been real and it has been fun. It's your boy. I'm up out of here. I'll see y'all guys when I see you every Monday morning for the live show of Just My Opinion podcast. I'll see you guys on the flip side. Thanks for coming in. Thank you for hitting the like button. Thank you for commenting. I'll see you guys. Deuces.